Okay, thanks everybody for coming tonight. This is the East Norwalk Neighborhood Association. I'm Diane Cece, and this is our June 15th meeting. Okay, and so for tonight's meeting, just one quick announcement is for those of you who hadn't seen in the email or from the city, the community forum that the city is going to be holding in conjunction with their consultant for the Gregory Boulevard and Fifth Street um, road project has been postponed to a date in the fall, which has not been determined yet. This is the forum that they originally had scheduled for a week from this Monday, I believe. But now they're postponing that and to be continued. And we're going to continue to try to get some more information on this in the meantime. We ask that you see the city website for the calendar of official meetings for the week and to keep up to date on public hearings. The ones that impact us most, we do try to get out in an email or post on our social media pages. We are still asking the community to provide your requests for specific topics and guest speakers for our monthly meetings. And so if there's a specific topic or someone in the city or at state government or in any role that impacts us that you'd like to see come in as a guest speaker, please email it to us at info@eastnorwalk.org and we'll see about getting that list updated. We are looking hopefully next month to get some of the folks in from transportation, mobility, and parking. We'll do a invitation to them because we want to talk more about Gregory and Fifth, but we also want to bring the community up to date on a major project that will impact Seaview Avenue as well. And then just as a reminder on our current business, we are continuing to monitor the activity for the development where the former Jimmy's Deli is. And we've also put in a request to the folks who want to open the grocery store at Rite Aid to get an update on that because we're now into June and we don't think there's been any significant movement now while they went through their permitting process. And then for tonight, we are having a special meeting with a community discussion, informal, but we're going to be recapping what we talk about tonight because the topic is quality of life. And then our next meeting next month is July 20th. Okay. And so for our meetings where we hope to have a lively discussion and a lot of interaction with the residents who are here, we do ask that only because we are formally the East Norwalk Neighborhood Association, we ask that when we're having discussions and Q&A and comments, that you understand that we like to give priority first to the residents who live here and the business owners, and then we'll open it up to other folks. And then also, if you could not jump in with second questions or comments until everyone has had an opportunity to speak. And that will keep things a little bit more fair and controlled as well. Okay, so the topic tonight is quality of life. And if you're on this meeting, it's probably because you got our email newsletter where we spoke about it a little bit and provided the link, but we want to talk about it more tonight. One of the reasons this topic came up is it occurred to me recently that very often we are all talking about the term quality of life. We mention it all the time, things that impact it, what's going on with the quality of life on your street and the city, etc. And we say the term quality of life all the time, but we've never really talked about the definition of it, but more importantly, how the residents, how you folks actually define it in your own lives and in your own areas where you live and within the city as well. So I thought I'd share first kind of the dictionary definition there. So we have Merriam-Webster, and there's a number of different ones, but basically they define it as the overall enjoyment of life and general well-being. Some people may compare some of that to Maslow's hierarchy as well in terms of well-being and the bare basics of life and happiness. And then they say specifically it's the degree to which a person or group is healthy, comfortable, and able to enjoy the activities of daily living. So I'll let you read that for a moment to let that kind of sink in there. I think it covers more than just what those words say there. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And that brought me to, I wanted to find one of these. These are called word clouds, by the way. And the way these work is when you have specific feedback from any group of people where they're identifying specific answers to questions. And what ends up happening is with all those answers and feedback and descriptions, a computer can generate a word cloud that very often what it will do is it will either categorize things by how many people brought that item up, and those will be in larger fonts. And then the lesser answers, or fewer responses that an answer got, those will be smaller. And in some cases, I think in this example I was able to pull from the internet, some of these things were classified by maybe the color as well. But I also wanted to leave this up here for a second because as we're talking about quality of life, sometimes you may need to be inspired a little bit to even think about it. Like I said, we all use the term a lot, but I don't think that we're really thinking on a day-to-day basis about our own quality of life and how it is and what impacts that. And I thought that these had a lot of good words in here that may prompt you to think about what you may want to talk about tonight or what you may want to consider going forward. And when I say going forward, I'm going to talk about that in a minute too. Okay, so quality of life brought us then to this question about how do Norwalkers define it? And the first thing that we wanted to look at is how you define what makes for good, better, and best quality of life. So if there's a way where you're thinking about your own quality of life and you're thinking it's pretty good overall, or it's the very best, or there may be different aspects in your life where the quality of life in one aspect is pretty good and in another, maybe not so good. And I think to a certain extent, the things that we're not going to focus on necessarily are like individual health and individual financial status or comfort, etc. I think we're going to focus more on neighborhood and community and city, but we can delve into as many areas as you think impact that relative to East Norwalk and being in Norwalk. And then to talk about some things that specifically impact your quality of life the most. And the most could be either the impact itself, or it can be something that it may not really be a big deal, but it happens so frequently or impacts you so frequently that it then becomes a significant impact to you. We definitely want to talk about whether or not there are things that the city can be doing or should be doing to improve quality of life. When we talk about life in East Norwalk, one of the things that we always say is so much of what we talk about in our daily life and our quality of life actually aligns directly with Norwalk City government and specific departments and agencies that all control those things. And so most of what you're probably going to think about tonight with quality of life can be linked back in some manner to the, or I shouldn't say most, but some of what you're thinking about can be linked back directly to the city. And part of ENNA, what we'd like to be able to do is to then take all of this feedback, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, and how we can actually get some constructive feedback that then gets shared with the city so that they have an opportunity to act on it with us. And then I didn't really want to close with anything negative here, but I think in the same vein, we do need to talk about the things that the city does that negatively, that you think negatively impacts your quality of life as well. Okay, and then if we have some time, I wanted to see if we can have a little bit of fun with the meeting graphic that we put out on social media and in our email. And I think I might have that here. I'll bring that up in a moment, but wanted to talk about that graphic in particular, and I'll tell you why when we get to that. But it has to do with an image that when we were first selecting it, and Charles, as you know, does our graphics and everything. When we were first taking a look at that, and when he first gave it to me, when I looked at this graphic, I was thinking there are things in there that really relate to addressing a whole diverse group of null walkers and what their particular interests are. And I think that's why it'd be interesting to take a look at the graphic itself and have some fun talking about what's in there and what's important. And then what we hope is in the future discussion would have us compile this feedback, get some of the terms, and pull all of that together. And then at a future meeting, have use Zoom and have an interactive poll based on that feedback, so that we can really check the barometer of the community to gauge what's really important, and try to rank those things in terms of what we might be looking to work on in the future. Okay, we're going to come back to this, but this is the graphic that we posted, and I'll give you a moment to take a look at this little neighborhood scene. This was from I think this was just a stock image that we have access to, and there's a number of things in here that I think people can be thinking about for quality of life. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this, but then I'm going to stop sharing. And I thought maybe we could take the questions that we thought we might want to talk about one at a time. And so we're going to open it up and take the question number one was, how do you folks and we all define what makes for good, better, and best quality of life? So I'm going to take this down here. Okay, so what we want to do is go ahead and get this opened up. The thing I mentioned at the beginning about note-taking, as most of you folks already know by now, if you're regulars to the meeting, I find it difficult to be watching for raised hands and reading the chats and trying to answer. And I really, really want to focus on listening and hearing what people have to say tonight. So rather than try to do a whiteboard or be trying to take notes, or for someone to be scribbling in chat to try to help me out there, I also want everyone to be able to listen to one another. Feel free to put your comments and questions and suggestions in chat. But what I'm going to do is between now and our next meeting, and hopefully sooner than that, I will review the video that we subsequently make of this. By the way, we do post this on YouTube, and Charles normally has access to that to be able to provide that by the end of the week, but I won't hold him to that. But not too long, we'll post that on our YouTube channel as well, so people can review it. And then I'll use that as a review to then compile the discussion and the answers that we have. So the first question was in terms of defining what folks think quality of life is, and defining, breaking it out. If you wanted to jump in to talk about what would make it good, better, and best, even though we're going to dig a little bit more into that in a few minutes. So Charles, as you know, I would not be keeping track of who may have raised their hand first. So if you know what order it was, we can go that way.
Okay, Heather has her hand up.
Thank you for the meeting tonight, guys. When I think of quality of life, I think of, enjoying my neighborhood, not being afraid to walk on the sidewalks, not being afraid to walk my dog and be worried about a speeding car that is coming twice as fast down a street. Recently, my son actually had a very big surgery, so we are on wheels right now. And, maneuvering through the neighborhood, I'm amazed because I haven't had a stroller in years. I'm amazed at how many unfinished sidewalks there are and how many residents have these overgrown bushes that a stroller can't even pass through. And all of the unfinished lips and the potholes. So yeah, that's what I think of.
Uh-huh. Great points, Heather. Thanks for sharing that. And again, that's a really good example of something that would be impacting your life on a daily basis. And even if it's not frequent, I mean, it's certainly annoying and to some extent dangerous as well. And a chronic complaint. Thank you for that. And you can hop back in again later. We're going to kind of go around the robin here for round one. Thanks, Charles. Thank you, Heather.
Okay, next up is Judy.
Hi, Judy.
Hi.
Oh, you're on mute.
Just a couple of things.
Is she on mute or no?
I can't. I think I'm unmuted, aren't I?
Yes, I
Okay, now I
hear
can
you.
hear you.
Okay. All this road work that's being done. I mean, I never can tell, which street to go down and how long it's going to take me to get anywhere because, the roads are closed. I mean, it's like they were doing some sort of project on East Avenue where a lane was closed and then it was closed for a long time and you couldn't, I mean, it was, and then it was closed again. They were drilling into the roadway in front of that church, the Vox Church, whatever it is, and near where you live, Diana, and just making big holes. I had no idea what they were doing, but they were at it for a week. And there was 1 week where, we can go to exit 17 or exit 16, where Westport was also doing some road work, and we just couldn't get anywhere. I mean, to me, having quality of life means a little predictability, on how things are going to go. I don't know why so much road work is being done right now on the streets. And also, there's nowhere in East Norwich that has like little shops and places like that. And, I'm not a walkable person, but I'm constantly running to Westport to do anything, to get a greeting card, anything I need. Do we know anything about what's going to happen to the Penny's Diner space yet?
Mm-hmm. So thanks, Judy, for those good points. I think it's a frustration that a lot of people share on a number of fronts. Like you said, the unpredictability of it. I hadn't heard anyone use that term before, but it's a good way to describe it because it does seem to be a moving target on some of those projects. So I appreciate that you brought that up. In terms of Pennies, we have not heard anything specific about what the owners plan to do. I'm sure it's any number of possibilities. But we do know, as you know, on our watch list, Pennies and the St. Thomas Parish Hall, and a number of other parcels are the ones that we are most concerned with in terms of what the new zoning allows. I can tell you that there had been some interest from a community member in possibly trying to restore that and renovate it to be a diner. And over the years, ENNA has pretty much consistently heard that people really value having the diner in the community, but maybe under different ownership, and that would be, obviously likely in this case, but no, nothing definitive. And thank you, Judy. Charles?
Okay, Heather mentioned a community center, which would be great for East Norwalk.
That's a good point, Heather. And, maybe worthwhile republishing, maybe pre-COVID at this point. I can't believe how the years fly. But years ago, ENNA did a series of, or at least a couple of pretty comprehensive, thorough surveys of the community. And a lot of it, and then prior to that, we did some that were in conjunction with city planning that was going on. And what we asked folks is, what are the things that you would most like to see in the community that are not here now? Whether or not you think they're possible, and what are the things that are in our community now that you would rather not see, for any number of reasons. And that really drew a lot of feedback, and we have some very good stats on that. We always like to quote, like right at the top of the list was always a things like a small grocer, which we're still hoping to have, and independent bookstore, a bakery. We wanted to have our substation for for the post office back again for mailing and shipping and postal stuff. And there was a whole list of things. A mom and pop type coffee shop, where you could also like do some meetings and things. But it was a really good feedback from the community, and I will see if I can get that out again. But community center is something that we really think, and what we thought too that ended up in that list would be a community center that would serve kind of as a community center for teens, which is really needed in the city for that, for that demographic, and also to have either a satellite or a standalone for seniors as well in the community. So I'm glad to hear that pop up again. Okay, who do we have next? Please don't be shy. Please jump in, and this is your meeting, you guys, as usual.
Okay, Judy has her hand up again.
Okay, all right, Judy. Since we have no takers, it could be a short meeting tonight. Go ahead.
Well, sorry. Another thing I was thinking about, in line with, a community space. I mean, even if it's not, we have senior space all over the place. What's happening with those buildings near the laundry? Where, that there's a whole row of empty storefronts.
Mhm.
Are those? Is there any plan to use those? Because it seems to me that those would be, they're already great spaces. They're in the community. They're fixed up.
So there's several things with that. Actually, the same owners who own Penny's Diner and own the Howard Johnson's property, etc., also own those. Since the fire that happened there and then the subsequent renovation, there hasn't really been any substantive effort that we can see or that the city found where they're legitimately looking to rent the space, and that's unfortunate. Because we really think that is a good spot, especially for some startup businesses that otherwise, can't afford to make a commitment to long-term or large-scale leases. Now, having said that as well, there's some interesting, and I really didn't want this to be information giving. I really want to hear from you guys, but I can tell you that there's some interesting legislative bills that are being considered now that would give municipalities, under the statutes, we would have the right then to look at empty commercial space and do assessments then that would encourage them to fill those spaces, either with having to pay something on a fee-based schedule, or increasing the way that tax assessments work on empty commercial or undeveloped property. And I think we would be hard pressed, at least with our Norwalk delegation, to find state legislators that would be opposed to some semblance of that type of tool, that would allow the city then to go after these chronically empty. The worst ones would be the ones that are blighted, and in that case, like you said, it's now with the facade that faces the park. It doesn't really look that bad, and there's parking and everything, and it's definitely walkable for a whole lot of folks. Maybe not me and you, Judy. That's a different story.
Well,
but
what are they doing to that park? There's like it almost looks like the cemetery. It almost looks like they're trying to rip out the cemetery and change it into a park.
Mm-hmm. Well, the cemetery, the work that's being done there really is all related to the state and city project to improve the drainage in the area. So all of that infrastructure has to do with drainage and sewer and all of that. The Triangle Park itself belongs to the ratepayers of the third taxing district electric. And several years ago, we all voted to fund some improvements in there for seating and flow and lighting and everything. And those are the improvements that you see in the park there today, but unrelated to the cemetery, even though the district also owns that and does some funding. But the construction you see there now is relative to infrastructure for drainage.
Okay. And then I was thinking, why not think, in terms of community space, why not do something more arts and crafty there? Sort of a drop-in place, or they have it they have a space in the public library, at least the main public library, where they have like a place where people can meet and do sewing or whatever together.
Right. Yeah, I think that's
Or a
definitely
good place
valid.
for book clubs.
There, things that, and on the list we did have for, makers space for people who are inclined to be able to make things. The city's also upgraded the zoning regulations to allow for what they call work live space, which is really appropriate for a lot of people that are in the arts and that type of industry, where we could take some of the structures and convert them to where there's retail and maker space on the bottom, and then the artist or the owner presumably would live up top, or in a duplex. And some of the updated zoning, in fact, they've actually put in new zoning that actually encourages that even more. So we may be likely to see that. Not necessarily in East Norwalk, but certainly they were pursuing in South Norwalk or Sono, and in the Wall Street West Ave area. Okay, I think I see. Is Heather back?
Yes.
Heather. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So
I don't see any other hands up.
So I live in the
Go ahead,
famous.
Heather.
I live in the famous 230 East Avenue apartment building owned by the lovely Spinnegers. And what I will say is the construction from the train is out of control. Last week they were drilling from the hours starting at 8 p.m. till 6 a.m. to the point where the entire building couldn't even sleep. Dogs were nervous. Kids were crying when they were getting out to go to the school bus because it was just piercing on the ears. So that's one really big thing. And then the other thing that I want to mention is the lot where the Jimmy's Deli was. We know that the townhouses are going to go there, but they really need to do a better job, whoever the heck owns it, cutting down the overgrown weeds and stuff, because every single time my dog and I pass there, I swear to you, Diane, we come home with ticks. So, I think it's really holding people accountable.
I'm so glad you made that point, Heather. And I also see Charles shaking his head because he knows this. We have first of all, we had opened multiple zoning violations on that property and that owner. But most recently, we have blight violations that we are still waiting to get enforced. Two of which are the overgrown growth, which is a violation for a whole host of reasons, not the least of which is ticks and rodents and other hazards that creates for the community. But I think I'm not sure if they remedied it now, double check with Charles, but also they had a broken part of the safety chain link fence down for the longest time. This has been chronic, but I'm going to say this in public on this video because all of our communication with the city is FOI-able, as you know. So the emails and the communication you can look up yourself. But this has been a chronic bad actor in terms of the fellow who bought the property and being disrespectful to not only the abutters there, but the community as a whole. And this has been going on now for 3 years in September. We felt that while there was any violation at all, and in light of multiple violations, that the zoning department should really take a hard look at just, kind of denying this at this point. They can't actually get a permit while there's a zoning permit while there are violations, but it's a type of thing where his modus operandi seems to be that he only clears the violation at the last minute when he's forced to do so. And then we think that he's also been avoiding the fines by using that tactic as well. which we don't think is fair. And you raised a really good point, and I'll put this out there. I didn't want to lead people in what they're thinking about, but I'm going to throw this out there because I know someone will mention it, or you may just think it's a given. A lot of quality of life issues that we have in East Norwalk, actually all around the city, are directly related to a complete lack of enforcement. And it runs a gamut from police to building to zoning to health, to any enforcement agency, is really, I think, not living up to what taxpayers would expect in two things: inspections that they do rather than relying on us residents to report things. And then second, when they do observe things and then violate, and then chronic or violations are, or complaints come in, that we think that they should act quickly and swiftly, and you know with a stick at this point. There's few instances where we could think about where there would be the carrot, and the fact that there's a long history of Norwalk being very lax in terms of enforcement, and even when there are violations, people have been pointing out dozens of cases where fines have racked up into tens of thousands of dollars, and then ultimately a hearing officer or the court might just waive those. And even for the people that do ultimately pay fines, what we found is that for a number of, we're not talking about the mom and pop who has a little, violation with a broken shutter or something like that. We're talking about major property owners for the most part. What we have found is this is just simply a business expense for them. It's on their, it's on their business line, and it's just a write-off to be able to do this. So there doesn't seem to be a real effort on many of their parts. And I'm not indicting all of them. Very often, what you won't even see the light of day on some things. There'll be a complaint. The city will reach out to a property owner. They may or may not have been aware of it, but once they're made aware of it, they remedy it quickly, and the city will, work with them to give them an opportunity to do that. So it's definitely not all of them, but I think you guys, as you go around our hood, the neighborhood, you could probably point out who the chronic folks are there. So enforcement or lack thereof is a biggie. Sorry, I started rambling again. Somebody shut me down. Raise your hand when you see Lisa there.
Yeah,
Lisa's
Lisa.
trying to shut me down.
Good evening. I'm going to speak more generically. When I think of quality of life, I think of being safe in the neighborhood. I think of access to quality health. I think of essentially housing for all. The multicultural aspect. And in many instances, I think Norwalk is doing a relatively good job in all. We have, in my opinion, one of the best health departments in the city. They are dynamite. Or in the state rather. So they keep us informed with with vaccinations, with diseases that are going about, mental health awareness, all kinds of things. So I think they are top notch. And we also, I think, have a excellent community providers group. All of the Norwalk area nonprofits get together every couple of weeks to discuss what's going on and needs of the community and access to all. On the housing side, in my opinion, there's no such thing as affordable housing in Norwalk. And for developers to set aside 10% of what they call affordable housing is nothing. Norwalk doesn't need more housing. Norwalk needs more affordable housing. The people that that work here in Norwalk, a majority of them can't live here in Norwalk. They've got to commute from wherever, and their homes are substandard. I think for developers, in order for a developer to put up apartments, it needs to be raised more than 10%. That's just a drop in the bucket to them. And all of the arts and cultures events that we have going on, they're wonderful, other than you can't get from here to there when they have some of these cultural events going on. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Really, really good points. And and you started to get into some of the basics, and people have mentioned it too. So you get into like safety is key. Safety in a number of factors. Safety. Physical safety and safety when we're driving and walking and biking, and safety with good police presence and police enforcement and well lit streets and things like that. But then also like you said, access to arts and culture. Some of our parks, I think, are some of the most beautiful. We have good access to parks. We do hear a constant request, though, for additional green space and open space. And so we're continuously disappointed when these new developments do get approved, that they're not required to have that type of space, not necessarily for the public, but certainly for their own tenants. And it baffles me because I'm thinking, like, if you're marketing to new tenants that are paying these rents, you would think that they'd want to have some green space and open space, and not, just some little patch or a gym that's inside the building. And I think the other thing too that you think about is the amenities of the city. It sounds like a silly thing, but a quality of life thing can also be around the effectiveness of your trash collection and snow plowing, and the types of city services that we get or don't get, and how those are managed. But thanks, those are all good points, Lisa. Jump back in
as far
again.
as amenities for the developers, some of the things that they have on their little community garden, extra point, you get more, whatever, or it's ridiculous. And one more
I don't want to be
thing about
no go ahead. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
One more thing about health. I think access to good health is one of those, you either have it or you don't. And there's pretty much no middle. There needs to be more so that all can have some form of equal access to quality health care, local.
I think that's a good point. I know in the past people have raised too, and I think maybe some of us take it for granted. But in a lot of community quality of life surveys that are done nationally by big agencies and organizations that do this for a living, one of the big factors is whether or not you have access to a hospital within a reasonable distance. And I think sometimes we take Norwalk Hospital for granted. Regardless of what you think about the care, I mean, the fact is that almost from wherever you are in the city, you are minutes away by ambulance to get to a hospital. And also the fact that we have decent, police response. There's some question about, fire response, because there's kind of some pockets in the city where that probably needs to be enhanced. But yeah, I don't disagree with health. I'm going to put a plug in for the health department too, because I think people may not be aware that in addition to all the things you mentioned with awareness and vaccines and things, the city has a pretty robust resident emergency response team group. It's not CERT, the CERT, that doesn't follow that protocol, but it doesn't have to. But it does follow all of the federal guidelines. And so the training is pretty intense. And I know that there's always room for more volunteers, and they're always asking for folks. And they also collaborate with the surrounding regional health departments as well. And so they will all team up to do different flu clinics and things. And speaking of regional and services too, the city also offers things like Hazardous Waste Day, and we collaborate with New Canaan and Darien and Wilton and things. And I'd probably, think some folks would have that on their list. It's a lot you think about. Like if you think, and that's another thing we wanted to ask people now as you're going about your daily lives until we meet again, if you can continue to think about the quality of life things, either the stuff that you say, hey, yeah, that really does make my quality of life better, and I don't even think about it because it's there, and maybe you take it for granted. Or when you're out and about, just think like this really stinks, and this really can be improved, and it would improve people's quality of life with that. Thanks, Lisa. We have
Priscilla is up
Priscilla, or
next.
who's next? Oh, Charles.
Priscilla.
Okay. Hi, Priscilla. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you very much.
I have a delay on. There you go.
I like to talk about the bus service, the way they rerouted the buses. So I live at 8 Norton, the Halstead.
Yes.
So they stopped, right. So they stopped the bus as of last August. They stopped the bus from coming through here. And I've tried to find out really why, and there's really no definitive answer about that. But as you probably know, this is a big complex. There's every age group here. There's disabled people here. There are elderly people here. I'm a cancer survivor. I don't drive. They just took the bus service away. And we have problems here, different times of the year. We have problems with coyotes. We have children going to school, walking to school alone. People, when daylight savings time ends, people are walking through here in the dark. There's nobody to go to talk about that. I mean, and I don't even understand why they stopped it, because it takes all of about 3 minutes for that bus to come in here and go back out.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I'm not sure if I was aware of that. I am aware of the fact that they recently did an overhaul of the routes, and they did consolidations, and they did eliminations, and added some new stuff in. Given the number of people that are there and the points that you just made, Priscilla, I'm surprised to hear that too. I will ask, and we could talk about it offline if you want to email me, but did you reach out to the Norwalk Transit Authority to see if they could provide you? Mm-hmm.
I tried, because another issue with that is, so, we have the wheels to you cars.
Right.
That's very sporadic. They don't really want to come out here. So what that leaves us with, if you're not driving, what that leaves us with is having to take an Uber. So now Uber understands that there's no bus service here, and Wheels doesn't want to come here, so they up the price for us to get in and out of here, and it's unfair, because so they're really cutting us off from essential services.
Right. I think that's a good point. I'm glad that you raised that, because I could, I definitely wasn't aware of that situation. I think it's something that needs to be looked into sooner rather than later. And it's the type of thing that should be raised with the transit authority, but also the commission, the city council, and our local reps. One of which I think still lives in Halstead, but I need to double check that. So,
wow.
And I know that there are a lot of people there who were engaged with a lot of things going on at Norton. And you're right, it's a very diverse community that has needs that otherwise can't be met. And the Wheels to You just doesn't cut it for a whole host of reasons. The app, a lot of people, don't use.
I wind up walking. I have to walk, so I have to walk. I don't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry. But in the morning time, I need to get to the train station. So it takes me about 30 minutes to walk to the train station. And then at night, if I can't get Wheels, there's no bus. That means I'm faced with having to walk back through here in the dark to avoid taking an expensive Uber.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. That's so good to know. Thanks, Priscilla.
Thank you.
And just if you want to reach out to me offline as well, just so that I can give you some information about being proactive to the best you can to reach out to folks. It's
Okay.
info, like info at eastnorwalk.org. The info
Info
like information. Yep.
info
IN
uh-huh.
at
Mm-hmm.
eastnorwalk.org. And we'll
Okay. All
post
right.
that too, but
Thank
that's
you
in our
so much.
email.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Betty's up
Okay,
next.
Charles. Hi, how are you? Hi, Alex. There you go,
Okay.
Alex. I think you're on now.
Okay, thank you. So first, Diane, thank you for holding this kind of meeting. Generally we don't get a chance to have any dialogue about something that's not a
Right.
specific project. So thank you for the idea. And I just want to put in a good word for the pork store. If we're talking about quality of life,
Yeah.
it's a funny thing. It sounds like a weird thing to mention, but it's just an example of how in a local community you can have some very distinctive and uh, unique sorts of little businesses and stores that really
Right.
serve the community and give it a very distinctive characteristic. And I always thought the pork store was one example of that. And I miss it, and I'm sorry it's gone forever, but it was
Yeah.
really an interesting part of our little community.
Yeah, and just share with people that the little strip that we talked about earlier that it's in, where that was over there at the
Right.
Ludlow.
Well, it's that little shopping center that was where they had the fire, and a part of that shopping center where the big laundromat is now. There used to be a drugstore, a pharmacy that also had a little
Right.
post office in it. So that really
Right.
served the community well, and that certainly is one of the needs I've always wished were replaced in some business to save us the trouble of having to go to South Norwalk or to Belden for
Right.
the post office. The thing I wanted to comment on tonight was the, to me, unfortunate sort of scolding story in Nancy on Norwalk about
Oh.
the roundabout and Fifth Street. And rather than commenting on uh, what the individuals were saying, I just wanted to draw kind of a general lesson because you were talking about city government, Diane, and how we view that in terms of quality of life. I think the major difference is that, from my experience in city government and state government, there are sort of bureaucrats who always like to talk about inputs. We did this, we did that, we held a hearing. We bought computers for the schools, we did this, we did that. Whereas I think for residents, we want to look at outputs. That is, what was the result of whatever action a local or state, even a federal government is taking. And to me, that article was a prime example of both the media and the city employees focusing and praising all of their inputs, whereas all of the residents were commenting that it was the outputs that were lacking. In other words, the actual ability of residents to communicate their points of view about a city project. These were criticized by city employees and seem to be validated by the media there. So I think part of quality of life in terms of government means really the ability to focus on outputs rather than just praising inputs that may end up being very ineffective. And that's where I was quite disappointed by that scolding article, despite the excellent turnout and wonderful points of view made by all the residents. All of us have different points of view in a pluralistic society about street safety and roundabouts and many other things. But what we all united on was the need to have more responsive city government in terms of consideration of alternatives and making sure that the community has a chance for input. And to me, that was a very good example. And we won in terms of the limited procedural step we asked to be taken. And to me, that's part of what city government should be all about. So just wanted to give my perspective on that. And thank you again, Diane.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that feedback, Alex. And of course, we agree with that because we suffer from too long from the check the box syndrome, where they're just going through the motions of what they either, feel the community is going to push back on in terms of engaging the community, or doing the bare minimum of outreach and input, from a statutory point of view. So that's all that they're going to do. And I think that they're better served one way or another to come to the community first, um, and first to listen to the community about what they want. And I think, going back to where I started at the beginning of the meeting, I was talking about the fact that when we went through this exercise years ago, and then subsequently also the Coalition of Norwalk Neighborhood Associations collaborated with us. So there was like the big five neighborhoods that put together this list. And basically then the city already had charted their course through POCD, the planning document, and already kind of had their sights set on what they wanted to do, and dismissed the feedback from the community. So it's one of these things where it's almost, and I've heard people say this literally, it's better not to ask us at all and engage us than to ask us and then just completely ignore what the feedback is, or not to consider the feedback that you get before you start these projects. One of the things that people really get annoyed about is that when the city says, well, we did ask, and this was in the feedback, and you had an opportunity to talk about it when we were doing the planning document, the plan of conservation and development. Well, that was what, 8-9 years ago. No one is going back to reference that, and it's supposed to be advisory and not what the guidelines are. And we saw that recently with this Gregory Boulevard debacle, where the first reference they made in terms of coming back, I would say aggressively at the community, was, well, we discussed this 5 years ago, and it was on some agenda that nobody even reads in November. And so this has been chronic, and we don't stand a chance. But I also like the point that you made when they're doing these projects where there's photo ops and bragging on everything with the input. I like the way you put that. Let's talk about the output. What was the goal and what was achieved, and did this make sense, so that we're not repeating the same mistakes over and over again? Because if you're patting your back on a project that no one in the community wants, you need to be questioning yourself about how that even came to be. And that's what we saw there. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Other thoughts on that particular topic, or we have any hands up with some new ones? And by the way, I know you guys see the names here and stuff. I think we have at least one member of the media here. There may be more than one, but we'll see what the outcome of that may be. And they're certainly welcome to hop on and participate as well, too. Okay. Who do we have, Charles?
Okay, there's something in chat here. Speaking of Fifth and Gregory, when they took down the big tree there, can they take the large trunk and make a rustic park bench from it with a buzzsaw, which would be what they should have done at Cemetery Street.
Right. So that's so the tree, I think, is that the tree they're talking about? The one at Cemetery and Gregory?
No,
that came down?
No, the Fifth and Gregory, when they do the roundabout. There's a
so if let's say if they do the roundabout, just so to pacify me, but yeah, if they do the roundabout to determine which trees, if any, would have to come down to accomplish that. By the way, there's 4 that are slated to come down on Monroe Street, I think, at the project that they're doing at the police station. But someone must have filed an objection on that, because now there's a public hearing. I think this Thursday night or next week. I have to check that. For the one that I can speak to, the one at Cemetery and Gregory, the beloved oak tree. That tree, or some portion of the trunk, was preserved. I believe Public Works has it safely tucked away. And our city council people, Ann Wennerstrand and Nicole Eady, were both kind of charged with taking a look at how the city can coordinate getting feedback on what the possibilities are for doing something with that tree, so that some portion of it stays in the community. It's some piece of artwork or something functional. To a certain extent, I think too, like if we do that, hopefully it's in a positive way, but not where somebody passes by some piece of artwork and it just reminds them once again of how awful that whole process was, and what happened to our community during that, and is likely to happen again. But I would say that with Gregory and Fifth, that the community definitely needs to be proactive. If this thing, doesn't die off, and be proactive in what we expect to happen and not happen, and certainly the trees are one of those components. Was Betty Bono? I don't know if she was talking to someone else or looking to talk to us, but you're on mute. If you there, you go. Okay. Oh, we can't hear. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Now I can hear you. Okay.
Okay.
Hi.
You know that I'm very concerned about the Fifth Street portion of the roundabout project. And one thing that bothered me about the Nancy on Norwalk article was that they say they lumped it all together. The Fifth Street portion is fairly new, and it's there because of a 2025 grant of money that Jim Himes got to extend the Norwalk River Valley Trail. And so that portion is fairly new. And because they are combining those two things, and they say, well, we're going to calm the traffic. And oh, by the way, we're using money to extend the Norwalk River Valley Trail. And that's why they originally proposed that the consultant design, the two designs the consultant was supposed to come up with, both included a 10-foot wide shared use path.
Right.
And I did look back at like comments when the, traffic safety master plan or whatever it was in 2021, there were 11 comments about Fifth Street. I suspect some of them were from the same source because they all came up with the same sort of language, but none of those 11 said, oh, I want to calm traffic on Fifth Street by taking away half the parking on the street.
Right.
And the reason I think they're considering taking away half the parking on the street is because they want to use the money for the Norwalk River Valley Trail. I wrote to the Norwalk River Valley Trail people and I said, well, the city is talking about extending it on Fifth Street. It's a residential area. There are 18 curb, driveways that intersect on that one block. Is this the kind of trail that makes sense? It's not like going through Oyster Shell Park. And they said, oh, well, this is really the city's project and we haven't had any input in it. I think what needs to happen is some serious discussion with the Norwalk River Valley Trail and also looking at other urban trails to see what do you do when the trail is not going through a wooded area, it's not going along a river, it's going through a residential neighborhood. And the Nancy on Norwalk article, one thing that bothered me is they said, oh, well, we looked at the aerial photograph and it was the photograph that the city had supplied and everybody has a driveway. Well, yes, almost everybody has a driveway. There is one shared driveway, but many of the driveways only will accommodate a single car. There are, I think, 5 or 6 multifamily residences on Fifth Street. There are multi-generational residences where there's more than one car. So the fact that you may have a driveway space to fit a single car doesn't mean that you don't need the on-street parking. And this kind of simplistic notion, I think, avoids the real issue, which is how can you make a shared use bike path down a residential street and have it be safe for the bikers have it safe for the residents. I mean, remember, if you don't have parking on your side of the street, you and your children or your senior relatives are going to be, you're putting a whole bunch of pedestrians who need to cross the street. You're not going to walk down all the way to the end of the block to cross the street and walk all the way back to get to your car. So you've got pedestrians. You have to talk about the safety of the pedestrians, the safety of the bicyclists, and saying that this is a solution to traffic problems on Fifth Street. And there are traffic problems on Fifth Street. Everybody ignores the stop sign, but to cause another safety issue because you're putting pedestrians on the street and you're putting a bike path where you're going to have, a lot of cross traffic on the bike path doesn't make sense to me. What makes sense is to have a really good conversation between the people in East Norwalk, the bikers, the Norwalk River Valley Trail, and also to look at, there's our urban trails in Boston and many other cities where they have made a different decision when the trail goes through a residential street. Yeah. So sorry to take up so much time, but I think that a whole, it isn't like, well, this plan has been around forever. No, it hasn't.
Right. Yeah, that's a new component, and I think took a lot of people by surprise with that too. And something too, Betty, I think well, first of all, we're also going to talk a little bit about Seaview Avenue because we're going to try to get Jim Travers and the Transportation, Mobility, and Parking guys in July if they can come, or soon to talk about that project. But when you bring up the different trails that might exist in other communities where you'd be coming down a strictly residential street like Fifth, I believe all of it is done by signage that's consistent. So that the signage directs you and that you're on the trail and you don't need this wide swath. And there are other parts, certainly where that's not going to exist. You raised an excellent point at one of the meetings where you said, look, we know that there's something similar that's going to be on the west side of Seaview Avenue in terms of this shared use, giant sidewalk. And to some extent that would be an area where they would be considering it because there's no residential on that side and there's only one driveway there for all intent and purposes. But I just forgot the point that I was going to make. But you raised a good point then about what do you do with Cove Avenue then, in terms of connecting? Are they having, what don't we know because we don't know what we don't know, but some of these things are being plotted, for lack of a better term, for months and years in advance before they see the light of day. One of the things that's unfortunate, and this comes up with a lot of quality of life issues in the city, is that the city and elected folks are just loath to turn away any grant money. If it's out there, it's almost like, we'll get it and figure out what we're going to use it for later. Or if they're grabbing it to use for a project, they just want to push ahead, even if the community hasn't bought into the project. And we have heard over the years just a number of times where they say, well, if we don't do it, we'll lose the grant money and some other community will do it. And the pushback from neighborhoods has very often been literally, well, then send the money back. Turn the money away. We'd rather you turn the money away than do a bad project. If the project is that good, the community will support it in the capital budget. That's number one. And if it's so big a project and it's so good that the community can't support it through capital budget taxes, then you go to the state legislator and to maybe Jim Himes and say, we have this idea, the community supports it, and when there's funding that's in this category, we'd like to be considered. It sounds so, I don't know, it's so simple to us mere mortals. I don't understand what they don't get about the logic of that process. And then you don't have the angst. You don't have us against them, and why?
And I think that it would, you know, I think that the money from Jim Himes was for the Norwalk River Valley Trail. It's not,
Right.
you know, this has to be spent on Fifth
Right.
Street or on Cove. And I know an earlier speaker talked about many sidewalks not being, you know, not being wide enough or not being complete. Well, on during the pandemic, they put nice, wide, new ADA compliant sidewalks on both sides of Fifth Street, and they work quite well. They are wide enough so that if you're pushing a stroller, if you're in a wheelchair, if you have a walker, or if you have a new bike rider, you know, you see parents out with the, you know, kids who, for the first time, the training wheels are off, they stay on the sidewalk and they go slowly, and there's plenty of room. Nobody has a problem.
Right.
The faster bikers that want to get down to the beach quickly, they go in the street. It's
Right.
fine. And to put in a 10-foot wide shared use path, and I was out there, I was the crazy old lady on Fifth Street, you know, measuring the sidewalk and measuring the street. And if they want the 10-foot wide shared use path plus the 4-foot wide buffer zone that they're talking about, they're going to have to rip out the sidewalk on one side or the other because there isn't enough room to maintain this brand new ADA compliant sidewalk that actually works really well. And is a nice safety enhancement on our street. So I don't know why they're rushing it, you know, and I think that they could, I like the idea of signage. If there are plenty of places where they could put nice signs up, you know, this is the part of Norwalk that the British burned in, you know, 1779, the burning of Norwalk.
Exactly. And the signing can be consistent without, so that it's, you know, recognized by who's ever interested in ultimately using the whole trail from Norwalk to Danbury. But it also can be a self-guided thing where it's linked in with the technology on your phone app, so that as you each,
that would be great.
You have your phone app, and it tells you a little bit about the part of Norwalk you're in. And I don't think any of what they're proposing is necessary to do that. And I think it's part of the reason that they were so resistant to provide us with what the concept drawing was that was handed off in the contract amendment. I mean, I think that's why. And at some point they talked about the fact that because there was going to be a portion of it, and I'm not clear if it was the roundabout Peanut or Fifth, but they literally said, and Charles maybe can help me with this, that they hadn't done it because they thought it would be so shocking to the community. And you know, the word shocking wasn't in a connotation. It was like shocking, like, wow, we're going to get this. It was like shocking, like, what the heck is going to happen? And I think I said in a go ahead, Charles. Yeah.
And after seeing what they provided, what was the big secret there that they would not share it?
Exactly. And even what they provided was just so convoluted. When you're looking at it, you still don't know what it is. And I have a feeling that's why the June meeting ultimately got postponed. But that wasn't clear in the media. I don't think they articulated that in that particular article. So, you know, I just don't understand why we would have to go through this and have it just, you know, over and over again. It's a definition of insanity. I think I put it in the ENNA newsletter or someplace, or maybe in my response on Nancy on Norwalk, that people have a right to know what's happening in their own front yard on their street. And the example I cite all the time, and I'm going to send this link out to folks who are on here, and in the next email I do. The city of New Orleans has a software package. I think it's called Notice Me or Notice something, meaning a public notice. And the way that it works, very briefly, is that you identify where you live or what parcel or neighborhood that you're interested in. And once you plug that into this map, and it's interactive, you can also do like geo boundaries, and you can highlight different areas. Once you do that, then you go to a menu selection of all the things you want to be notified of that impact either that parcel or that neighborhood. And it could be something like a zoning amendment. It could be a development application. It could be sewer work. It could be any number of things. There's dozens of them. And when you do that, it's an automatic opt-in. You don't have to go looking for stuff on agendas and do it hourly because things get update and search for them. Many of the documents the city's providing now, for some reason, when you go to do a find on their PDF versions, it doesn't allow you to do a search, which makes it even more difficult. With this opt-in software, so for example, I live on Olmsted Place, but let's say I was just interested in my little neighborhood. I could just highlight my house and maybe my street, and then pick the things that I want to be notified of. Anything that comes through the city that's on any one of those parcels, I would get an automatic notice of. Even if it was somebody putting in an application to add a kitchen. And you might not want to opt for those, but that's the detail that gets down to anything that comes through the city that has that address. And I don't understand. I have been asking for years. I've presented it to two different mayors, two different chief of staff, communications people, IT people, and I don't know. The only thing I can think of is that maybe the less we know, the better. But back to my original point, because I started rambling again. Software like that is so easy to install. It links everything for the city, and it gives people an opportunity to know ahead of time what's going to happen on their own street. One of the things that's alarming to me is when I wake up and I see the call before you dig people making marks all over the road. I'm like, oh boy, what are they up to? Like, is this? That starts making you nervous. Something is going on in the city. But I think it's something that the city needs to do a better job of. Obviously, is letting people know what's coming their way, and that's the only way to do it. Because ultimately everything in the city links back into a parcel. So even if it's a zoning amendment that could impact you, the zoning amendment has to identify the zoning geography that it impacts. So ultimately you would still get that notification, even if it was something that was a broader stroke of a change. Anyway, sorry, go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, I just have one more comment. Sorry to ramble on, but I agree with you that there are much better ways, than having to go on the city website and like comb through all the committees and are they going to talk about this, that, or the other. And sometimes the agendas don't even make clear what they're talking about.
Right.
But in addition, if I share, I live on Fifth Street. I've lived on Fifth Street for 42 years, and I share people's concern. Yeah, every time I walk out, somebody is going through the stop sign at Cove and Fifth. And yeah, people go too fast. The solution is not to come up with a proposal that's going to put a whole bunch of pedestrians on Fifth Street having to cross the street multiple times, even to get their kids and groceries in the car. And I think that there are some solutions that would work really well that they should think about. There are plenty of places in Norwalk, for example. Hawkins bisects, there's one block of Hawkins and it bisects Fifth. And there are plenty of places where in Norwalk I've seen where a street comes into a longer street where there tends to be speeding. So they put a stop sign,
Right.
think it would be great. Put another stop sign. So not just on Cove, so you turn on Cove and then you race down to, Gregory, but put a stop sign at Hawkins. Always stop. So everybody's got to stop. Or even since the Norwalk River Valley Trail is going to be there. And Diane, I love what you said about the signage and making it, seem welcoming and, goes along with the signs at other parts of the trail. You could put crosswalks. You could put crosswalks that are distinctive, like the ones on Washington Street, or a slightly raised crosswalk. It's not a speed bump, so the fire department wouldn't have a problem with it, but slightly raised. They're red brick and then they're outlined in white and they look kind of pretty. And there's like 3 or 4 of them down the block of Washington Street, and it makes you aware.
Right.
A lot of people are going to be crossing here, and I mean, it could be done so easily. And, then bikers can decide, the bikers that want to go fast, put them on the street. Those
Right.
of us, people that are pushing baby carriages, they want to stay on the sidewalk. I ride a bike, and I'm confessing to the public here, it's a senior tricycle. And it's not one of those cool recliner ones. It's just like a senior tricycle. And, I stay on the sidewalk because, there's no way I'm going to run anybody down with my senior tricycle.
Yeah. And I think that whole project too begs the question, and we'll wrap up talking about that one, but it does beg the question of, like, really what is their ultimate goal? Because if the thing was, how the issue is traffic calming, then what you do is you look at your toolkit of what are the effective ways to calm traffic and make it more pedestrian safe. Whereas this seems to be one of these, again, a solution looking for a problem. Where else can we do this 10-foot wide thing that is going to be, we're going to be recognized for, and it's the method du jour of accommodating, multimodal, or multi, whatever they're calling it, transport, on one sidewalk. And no, you have to first ask the question is, what's the problem? What are we trying to solve, if anything? And then look at like you said, look at the other things that are available that would be less intensive and, certainly less money too. Thanks, Betty. We can come back, but I think I saw some other hands up or in the chat.
Priscilla had her
We're going to go
hand
to
up
about
earlier.
8:30 or so. Okay.
Priscilla, are you still there?
Who is it for Joe?
Yeah, she took her hand down. If I could just chime in 1 second and backpedal to the 65 Van Zant property, Jimmy's Deli. They were actually up for a zoning citation hearing in early May. And they were up for unkept sidewalks, dilapidated fence, unkept landscape, and left vacant. The hearing was postponed due to a conflict of interest by the hearing officer.
Right.
Do we know exactly what happened there?
We don't. I was actually hoping to get an update on this, last week. We've been crazy busy at work, but to be continued. And I think that doesn't surprise me. First of all, you would know that ahead of time because a hearing officer is assigned. So I don't know what was disclosed there. But this thing has been dragging on now for months. And like I said, in one case or another, he's been back and forth on zoning violations since September 3 years ago. There are other cases too that are similar where they either get postponed or they get more time, or they waive the fees. And we've seen the ones that come in where they remedy the violation and then just wait to get caught again, either doing the same thing or a new violation. But honestly, I wish I had the update on Jimmy's, and I'll try to get that this week, and I can post it in the weekend email because that's very interesting. I'd like to know if there's a way for us to find out what that conflict was, for the hearing officer and that particular developer. I'd be curious to see that.
Okay.
Another thing too is speaking. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Charles.
No, Priscilla's back when you're done.
Yeah. I wanted to mention something else too that people think about too, is just in terms of quality of life, is also to consider air pollution, noise pollution, light pollution. I find, when I'm thinking about quality of life, and I don't know if it's just my age, but one of the first things I think about is peace and quiet. I think that's a big factor in Norwalk from a whole bunch of points of view. But also light pollution and air pollution and signage pollution, I find offensive. You have to have they're doing these complicated intersections. And now someone said, Gregory at Cemetery looks like an on-ramp to the Bruckner Expressway. And there's arrows and signs and parking, no parking. And I think that's all, visually offensive. And I add that. Those types of pollutions to my list there too, but certainly noise too. Okay. And who had their hand up, Charles? Go another
Priscilla.
few minutes.
Okay, I'm
Hi,
sorry.
Priscilla.
I was having a problem unmuting myself. So just very quickly, I'm just curious. How do you get the word out about these meetings?
About city meetings or our meetings?
Your meeting.
Oh, so our meeting. So most people are part of our. And I'll just explain this too briefly if there's somebody new on here. So East Norwalk Neighborhood Association, geographically, there's like no membership, but we automatically represent all the residents who live in 06855.
Oh,
Although we have a lot of people that participate that are right over the line of the highway because we're like really sister communities. And most people get the information by being on our email newsletter list. You can just sign up at info@eastnorwalk.org or go to our website, which is eastnorwalk.org. Our website does not get maintained as much as we'd like to because we're all volunteers and that takes a lot of time. So we tend to have to go to social media when we need to get stuff out quick and then link people to where to get more information. So for us, it tends to be Facebook. We have a Facebook page, and we also link to some of the other community pages. We also do Instagram, and we also do nextdoor.com because we have hundreds and hundreds of residents in East Norwalk that participate in that. So those are the
okay.
big ways that we communicate on meetings and on our meetings, and also to get information out when we think you need to get to a city meeting as well.
Okay, my son is here and he's saying that in his age group he's probably not well represented here in the community. He's
Right.
in his 30s.
Okay. Well, first of all, you are young. I thought you were going to say a teenager. Okay.
I'm
There you
60.
go. What's that, Priscilla?
I'm 60.
Okay. Well, I've done some things wrong in my life. Clearly, I'll just leave that at that. But anyway, you look wonderful. But yes, I
Thank
would
you.
say that we do. Oh my gosh, we've had this topic ad nauseum in terms of trying to be a more diverse group where we're getting in different demographics, both in race and gender and age groups and language ability.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and to try to get more people to participate, and it's really hard. We do literally reach thousands of people, but they participate to the level that they either can, or a lot of people will only really participate when it's a topic that impacts them, which is fine. We get that too. um, but we probably are not using the tools that would reach a younger demographics in the generation. I don't know all the letters, but if we're looking in the 18 to say 40 group, we're probably lacking there. I'd love to hear from your son on what he would recommend in terms of doing better work of outreach to that age group.
Okay, I'll give him the information.
I'm sorry, say again, hon?
I will give him the information. The reason I found out
Yeah.
about you guys was because I was going to this train station one day and there was a lady early in the morning and she was giving out flyers complaining about the train station taking too long to be put up. That's how I found out.
That was probably me. I think
Maybe.
that was probably me. And
Okay.
if it was cold and bundled up, and yeah, like
Or
getting in
Yes,
me.
that
it was.
early.
It was. It was.
Okay, yeah, I want to say I don't know how you commuters do that. I'm going to start off and say that because I know it was cold, and
Mhm.
everybody's in a rush, and everybody was very nice to at least take the flyer because there's not a lot of time to talk. I know when you're trying to catch a train, and that was our
Right.
goal, just the flyer, and I think we may have had a QR code on that one to
Mhm.
link in to get more information. But so see that works. Charles collaborates on getting that stuff done, so there
I
we
think
go.
it
You
was
see,
the
it works.
coldest day of the year that day. It was
It,
so cold.
yeah, it might have been. And I'm so glad you mentioned that's how you heard about us. But clearly, we're always looking for ideas on how to spread the word. We try to get the word out there as much as we can. One of the things that we like to do is when you live on a street in Norwalk, we ask that you be something of like kind of like a street ambassador to let your neighbors know about us,
I
and
can
as
do
new
that.
people move in, to let them know. And in Halstead, we've actually had some campaigns of flyers when the whole Norden Metro North project was going on. You had several volunteers in the building that literally put a flyer under every door in that complex.
I could do that. I could do that.
There you go. And a lot of times what we need people to just get down in the trenches, hand out flyers or make phone calls or write emails. In the neighborhoods, the single family and the other neighborhoods, we ask people to post lawn signs so we get the word out on specific, topics that we're looking to cover. So thanks, Priscilla. And I hope you'll be on the email list now and you'll stay, you'll stay in tune.
I am.
Okay. That's probably how you got the link here, unless someone shared
Absolutely.
it. So.
That's right. That's how I got it. That's right. Thank you, everyone.
Good.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we'll take, I think, one more.
Okay, Heather also joined in, and she'd be happy to put out flyers on East Avenue.
Great. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
And whenever we have a call for volunteers, we almost normally then will have a little toolkit that we'll also publish for what we need people to do. And there's enough opportunities there to whatever person's time and ability is. You can find something that you can, help with. And we're always grateful for that. So I'm not going to go back to the, we didn't really have time for it, but I know we're at 8:30 now. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time. But I'll do this as a homework assignment because I did really want to talk about the things that people see in that graphics that I first posted about that little neighborhood there with the park and the houses and the bike and the road and the et cetera, to talk a little bit about that. But I mentioned at the beginning, I didn't take any notes because I'm going to review all of this from the video. We also get a transcript of our chat, so I'll have all of that as well. And we want this to be an ongoing dialogue where we can then have some constructive feedback to help ENNA, but also that will help us as a tool when we're working with the city departments and agencies that really have ultimate control over so many of these things that impact your daily quality of life, is the way I would put it. So apologies if I forgot anything important. For the newcomers and the old comers, you'll know this. I think I bummed out 2 months in a row. I normally turn off the recording and I stay on to just have some informal conversations. But unfortunately, it's another night where I'm not really able to do that. If there's something you wanted to discuss offline, though, you can email that into me at info@eastnorwalk.org. And I can certainly contact you offline, or at least have an email dialogue. Other than that, we'll be watching Jimmy's Diner. We'll be keeping up to date on this Gregory and Fifth. We're going to be looking to get some information out on, because I'll say this, as surprised as folks were about Gregory Boulevard and 5th Street, I think people are going to be very surprised what they don't know about Seaview Avenue. And so we now want to get out ahead of that and get that out there, because we think the city's going to say, well, we had a meeting and we had a forum, and it's going to go down that same dance. And we're not doing that dance anymore. So, to put it politely. Okay. Anyway, thank you guys all so much. There's a lot of great stuff we heard. Really, really good meeting. I know it's hard to kind of have these dialogues back and forth in Zoom. And sometimes I'm just addressing and answering the questions, but really good to see everybody, whether you participated or not. And like I said, if you want to contact us offline, go ahead and send us an email. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned. We'll see you via email and social media. Good night, everyone. Thank you.